go ahead. I'm gonna spotlight Marlissa. We have Marlissa, and she's with Shaylin. She's got story time with us, so because of that, I'm gonna mute everybody, so that way we show respect to Marlissa. Alrighty.
You're welcome.
All right, it's all you, girl.
Okay, we're on chapter 7 of Charlotte's Web. Bad news. Wilbur liked Charlotte better and better each day. Her campaign against insects seemed insensible and useful. Hardly anybody around the farm had good words to say for a fly. Flies spent their time persisting others. The cows hated them, the horses detested them, the sheep loathered them. Mr. and Mrs. Zickerman were always complaining about them and putting up screens. Wilbur admitted the way Charlotte managed. He was particularly glad that she always put her victim to sleep before eating it. It's really thoughtful of you to do that, Charlotte, he said. Yes, she replied in her sweet musical voice. I always give them an anesthesiac so they won't feel pain. It's a little service I throw in. As the days went by, Wilbur grew and grew. He ate three big meals a day. He spent long hours lying on his side, half asleep, dreaming pleasant dreams. He enjoyed good health and he gained a lot of weight. One afternoon, when Fern was sitting on her stool, the oldest sheep walked into the barn and stopped to pay a call on Wilbur. Hello, she said. Seems to me you're putting on weight. Yes, I guess I am, replied Wilbur. At my age, it's a good idea to keep gaining. Just the same, I don't envy you, said the old sheep. You know why they're fattering you up, don't you? No, said Wilbur. Well, I don't like to spread bad news, said the sheep, but they're fattening you up because they're going to kill you. That's why. They're going to what? Screamed Wilbur. Fern grew rigid on her stool. Kill you, turned you into smoked bacon and ham, into the old sheep. Almost all the young pigs get murdered by the farmer as soon as the real cold weather sets in. There's a regular conspiracy around here to kill you at Christmas time. Everybody is in the plot. Zuckerman, even John Arbull. Mr. Arbull, sobbed Wilbur. Fern's father? Certainly. When a pig is to be butchered, everybody helps. I'm an old sheep and I see the same thing. Same old business, year after year. Arbull arrives with his 20 shots. Stop, screamed Wilbur. I don't want to die. Save me, somebody save me. Fern was just about to jump up when a voice was heard. Be quiet, Wilbur, said Charlotte, who had been listening to this awful conversation. I can't be quiet, screamed Wilbur, racing up and down. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to die. It is true what the old sheep says, Charlotte. Is it true they are going to kill me when the cold weather comes? Well, said the sparrow, fluttering through her thoughtfully at her web. The old sheep has been around this part for a long time. She had seen many a spring pig come and go. If she says they plan to kill you, I'm sure it's true. It's also the dirtiest trick I ever heard of. But people don't think of. Wilbur burst into tears. I don't want to die, he moaned. I want to stay alive right here in my comfortable manure pile with all my friends. I want to breathe the beautiful air and lie in the beautiful sun. You're currently making a beautiful noise, snapped the old sheep. I don't want to die, screamed Wilbur, throwing himself to the ground. You shall not die, said Charlotte briskly. What, really? Cried Wilbur. Who's going to save me? I am, said Charlotte. How? Asked Wilbur. That remains to be seen. But I'm going to save you, and I want you to quiet down immediately. You're carrying on it in a childish way. Stop your crying, and I can't stand hysterics. A talk at home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arbor and Fern Soon I added breakfast in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. Did you know that Uncle Homer's gu- gu- goslings had hatched? Said Fern. How many? Asked Mr. Albert. 7, replied Fern. There are 8 eggs, but 1 egg didn't hatch, and the goose told Simpleton she didn't want it anymore, so he took it away. The goose did what? Said Mrs. Arble, gazing at her daughter with a worried look. Told Simpleton she didn't want the egg anymore, repeated Fern. Who is Simpleton? Asked Mrs. Arble. He is the rat, replied Fern. None of us like him much. Who's us? Asked Mr. Arble. Oh, everybody in the barn cellar. Wilbur and the sheep and the lambs and the goose and the gander and the gooselings and Charlotte and me. Charlotte, said Miss Albers. Who's Charlotte? She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever. What does she look like? Says Mrs. Albert. Well, said Fern thoughtfully. She has 8 legs, all spiders too, I guess. Charlotte is a spider? Asked Fern's mother. Fern nodded. A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her. Does he really? Said Mrs. Albert, rather vulgarly. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. Oh, yes, Wilbur adored Charlotte, and said Fern. Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched? I haven't the faintest idea, said Mr. Albert. Tell us. Well, when the first gooseling stuck his little head out from under the goose, I was sitting on the stool in the corner, and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it. Don't you think that is what pleasant things for her to say? Yes, I do, says Mrs. Arbor. And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. Tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon, you can tell me more about what goes on in Mr. Homer's barn, Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you? I like it there, replied Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs after she had left the room. Mrs. Albert spoke in a low voice to her husband. I worry about Fern, she said. Did you hear the way she rambles on about the animals, pretending that they talked? Mr. Albert chuckled. Maybe they do talk, he said. I've sometimes wondered, as any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's just got a lovely imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things. Just the same, I do worry about her, replied Mrs. Albert. I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him. He loves her almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how queerly she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals don't talk. Mr. Apple grinned. Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's, he said. Wilbur's boast. Spider's web is stronger than it looks. Although it's made of thin, dedicated strands, the web is not easily broken. However, a web gets torn every day by the insects that kick around in it, and a spider must rebuild it when it gets full of holes. Charlotte liked to do her weaving during the late afternoon, and Fern liked to sit nearby and watch. One afternoon, she learned the most interesting conversation was witnessed a strange event. You have awfully hairy legs, Charlotte, said Wilbur as the spider busily worked on her task. My legs are hairy for a good reason, replied Charlotte. Furthermore, each leg of mine has 7 sections: the coax, the trunk matter, the femur, the pedula, the tubula, the metatorius, and the teres. Wilbur's that full of breath. You're kidding, he said. No, I'm not either. Say those names again. I didn't catch them the first time. coax, traumator, femur, patella, tibia, the metatarius, and the tetrus. Goodness, said Wilbur, looking down at his own chubby legs. I don't think my legs have 7 sections. Well, said Charlotte, you and I lead different lives, and you don't have to spin a web. That takes real leg work. And I spin a web if I tried, said Wilbur, boosting. I'm just never tried. Let's see you do it, said Charlotte. Fern chuckled softly, and her eyes grew wide with love for the pig. Okay, replied Wilbur. You coach me, and I'll spin one. It must be a lot of fun to spin a web. How do I start? Take a deep breath, said Charlotte, smiling. Wilbur breathed deeply. Now climb to the highest place you can get to like this. Charlotte raced up to the top of the doorway. Wilbur scrambled to the top of the pile of manure. Very good, said Charlotte. Now make an attachment with your spinners. Hurl yourself into space and let out a drag line after as you go down. Wilbur hesitated a moment, then jumped out into the air. He glanced hastily behind to see if a piece of rope was following him to check his fall, but nothing seemed to be happening in his rear. And the next thing he knew, he landed in the thump. Oop, he grunted. Charlotte laughed so hard her web began to sway. What did I do wrong? Asked the pig when he recovered from the thump. Nothing, said Charlotte. It was a nice try. I think I'll try again, said Wilbur cheerfully. I believe that I need to is a little piece of string to hold me. The pig walked out to his yard. You there, Templeton, he called. The rat poked his head out from under the trough. Got a little piece of string I could borrow? Asked Wilbur. I need to spin a web. Yes, indeed, replied Templeton, who saved string. No trouble at all. Anything to oblige. He crept down into the hole, pushed the goose egg out of the way, and then returned with an old piece of dirty white string. Wilbur examined it. That's just the thing, he said. Tie one end to my tail will you, Templeton? Wilbur crouched with his thin, curly tail toward the rat. Templeton seized the string and passed it around the end of the pig's tail and tied the 2 half hitches. Charlotte watched it in delight. Like Fern, she was truly fond of Wilbur, whose smelly pen had stale food attracted the flies that she needed, and she was proud to see that he was not as quieter and willing to try anything to spin a web. While the rat and the spider and the little girl watched, Wilbur climbed again to the top of the manure pile, full of energy and hope. Everybody watch, he cried. And summoning all his strength, he threw himself into the air head first. The string trailed behind him, but as he had neglected to fasten the other end to something, he didn't really do any good. And Wilbur landed with a thud, crushed and hurt. Tears came to his eyes. Templeton grinned. Charlotte just sat quietly. After a bit, she spoke. You can't spin a web, Wilbur. I advise you to put the idea out of your mind. You lack 2 things. Need for spinning a web. What are they? Asked Wilbur sadly. You lack a set of spinners and you lack knowing how. But cheer up, you don't need a web. Zuckerman supplies you with 3 big meals a day. Why should you worry about trapping food? Wilbur sighed. You're ever so much clever and brighter than I am. Charlotte, I guess. I was just trying to show off. Serves me right. Templeton untied his string and took it back to his home. Charlotte returned to her weaving. You don't feel too badly, Wilbur, she said. Not many creatures can spin webs. Even men are as good as at it as spiders, although they think they're pretty good. And they'll try anything. Did you hear of the Queensboro Bridge? Wilbur shook his head. Is it a web? Sort of, replied Charlotte. But do you know how long it took men to build it? 8 whole years. My goodness, I would have starved to death waiting that long. I can make a web in a single evening. What do people catch in a Queensboro bridge? Bugs? Asked Wilbur. No, said Charlotte. They don't catch anything. They just keep trotting back and forth across the bridge, thinking there is something better on the other side. If they don't hang head down at the top of the thing and they wait quietly, maybe something good could come along. But no, with men, it's rush, rush, rush every minute. I'm glad I'm a sedimentary spider. What does sedimentary means? Said Wilbur. Means I sit still a good part of the day and don't go wandering all others' creation. I know a good thing when I see it, and my web is a good thing. I put I say put and wait for the what comes. Gives me a chance to think. Well, I'm sort of a sedentary myself, I guess, said the pig, and I hang around here whenever I want to or not. You know where I'd really like to be this evening? Where? In a forest looking for bees, beech nuts and truffles and delectable roots. Pushing leaves aside with my wandering strong nose, searching and sniffing along the ground, smelling, smelling, smelling. You smell just the way you are, remarked a lamb. You had just walked in. I could smell you from here. You're the smelliest creature in this place. Wilbur hung his head. His eyes grew wet with tears. Charlotte noticed his embarrassment and she spoke sharply to the lamb. Let Wilbur alone, she said. He has a perfect right to smell concerning his surroundings. You're no bundle of you're no bundle of sweet peas yourself. Furthermore, you are interrupting a very pleasant conversation. What were you talking about, Robert, when you were so rudely interrupted? Oh, I don't remember, said Wilbur. It doesn't matter any difference. Let's not talk about it anymore. For a while, Charlotte. I'm getting sleepy. You go ahead and finish fixing your web, and I'll just lie here and watch you. It's a lovely evening. Wilbur stretched out on his side. Twilight settled over Zuckerman's barn, and a feeling of peace. Bart knew it was almost supper time but she couldn't bear to leave. Swallows passed on silent wings in and out of the doorways, bringing food to the young ones. From across the road to a bird sang, "Whippy poor Will, whippy poor Will." Lurvy sat down under an apple tree and lit the pipe. The animal sniffed the familiar smell of strong tobacco. Wilbur heard the trill of the tree road and the occasional slamming of the kitchen door. All these sounds made him feel comfortable and happy, for he loved life and loved to be a part of the world on a summer evening. But as he lay there, he remembered what the old sheep had told them. The thought of death came to him, and he began to tremble with fear. Charlotte, he said softly. Yes, Wilbur, I don't want to die. Of course you don't, said Charlotte in a comforting voice. I just want it more in the barn. I just love to be here in the barn. I love everything about this place. Of course you do, said Charlotte. Well, we all do. The goose appeared following up by her 7 gooselings. They thrust their little necks out and they kept up musical whistling. Like a tiny trumpet pipers, Wilbur listened to the sound with love in his heart. Charlotte, he said. Yes, said the spider. Were you serious when you promised you would keep them from killing me? I was never more serious in my life. I am not going to let you die, Wilbur. How are you going to save me? Asked Wilbur, whose curiosity was very strong on this point. Well, said Charlotte regularly, I don't really know, but I'm working on a plan. That's wonderful, said Wilbur. How is the plan coming, Charlotte? Have you got very far with it? It is coming along pretty well. Wilbur was trembling again, but Charlotte was collected. Oh, it's coming all right, she said lightly. The plan is still in its early stages and it hasn't completely shaped up yet, but I'm working on it. When do you work on it? Begged Wilbur. When I'm hanging a head down at the top of my web. That's when I do my thinking, because then all the blood is in my head. I'd be only too glad to help in any way I can. Oh, I'll work it out alone, said Charlotte. I think better if I think alone. All right, Wilbur said. But don't fail to let me know if there's anything I could do to help, no matter how slight. Well, replied Charlotte, you must try to build yourself up. I want you to get plenty of sleep and stop worrying. Never hurry and never worry. Chew your food thoroughly and eat every bite of it, except you must leave it just enough for Templeton. Gain weight and stay well. That's the way you can help. Keep fit and don't lose your nerve. Do you think you understand? Yes, I understand, said Wilbur. Go along to bed then, said Charlotte. Sleep is important. Wilbur trotted over to the darkest corner of the pen and threw himself down. He closed his eyes. In another minute he spoke. Charlotte, he said. Yes, Wilbur. May I go out to my trough and see if I left any of my supper? I think I left just a tiny bit of mashed potatoes. Very well, said Charlotte. But I want you in bed without delay. Wilbur started to race out to his yard. Slowly, slowly, said Charlotte. Never hurry and never worry. Wilbur checked himself and crimped slowly to his trough. He found a bit of potato, chewed it carefully, swallowed it, and walked back to bed. He closed his eyes and was silent for a while. Charlotte, he said in a whisper, yes. May I get a drink of milk? I think there are a few drops of milk left in my trough. No, the thought is dry. No, the trough is dry, and I want you to go to sleep. No more talking. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Wilbur shut his eyes. Fern got up and from her stool and started for home, her mind full of everything she had seen and heard. Good night, Charlotte, said Wilbur. Good night, Wilbur. There's a pause. Good night, Charlotte. Good night, Wilbur. Good night. Good night. An explosion. Day after day, the spider waited, heading down for an idea to come to her head. Hour by hour, she sat motionless, deep in thought, having promised Wilbur that she would save his life. She was determined to keep the promise. Charlotte was naturally patient. She knew from experience that if she waited long enough, a fly would come to her web. She sure that if she thought long enough about Wilbur's family, an idea would come to her mind. Finally, one morning toward the middle of July, the idea came. Why, how perfectly simple, she said to herself. The way to save Wilbur's life is to play a trick on Zuckerman. If I could fool a bug, thought Charlotte, I could surely fool a man. People are not as smart as bugs. Wilbur walked into his yard just as at that moment. What are you thinking about, Charlotte? He asked. I was just thinking, said the spider, that people are very gullible. What does gullible mean? Easy to fool, said Charlotte. That's a mercy, replied Wilbur, and he lay down in the shade of the fence and went fast asleep. The spider, however, stayed wide awake and gazing affectionately at him and making a plan for his future. Summer was half gone. She knew she didn't have much time. That morning, just as Wilbur fell asleep, Avery Arble wandered into Zuckerman's front yard, followed by Fern. Avery carried a live frog in his hand. Fern had a crown of daisies in her hair. The children ran for the kitchen just in time for a piece of blueberry pie, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Look at my frog, said Avery, placing the frog on the drain board and holding out his hand for pie. Take that thing out of here, said Mrs. Zuckerman. He's hot, said Fern. He's almost dead, that frog. He is not, said Avery. He lets me scratch him between the eyes. The frog jumped and landed in Mrs. Zuckerman's dish pan full of soapy water. You're getting your pie on you, said Fern. Can I look for eggs in the hen house, Aunt Edith? Run outdoors, both of you, and don't bother the hens. It's getting all over everything, shouted Fern. His pie is all over his front. Come on, Frog, cried Avery. He scooped up his frog. The frog kicked, splashing the soap water onto the blueberry pie. Another crisis, groaned Fern. Let's swing in the swing, said Avery. The children ran to the barn. Mr. Zuckerman had the best swing in the country. It was a single long piece of heavy rope tied to the beam over the north doorway. At the bottom end of the rope was a fat knot to sit on. It was arranged so that you could swing without being pushed. You climbed a ladder to the hayloft. Then, holding the rope, you stood at the edge and looked down and were scared and dizzy. Then you straddled the knot so that it acted as a stick. Then you got up all your nerve and take a deep breath and jump. For a second, you seemed to be falling to the barn floor below, but then suddenly the rope would begin to catch you, and you would sail through the barn door going a mile a minute, with the wind whistling in your eyes and the ears and the hair. Then you could zoom upward into the sky, look up at the clouds, and the rope would twist, and you would twist and turn with the rope. Then you would drop down out of the sky and come sailing back into the barn, almost into the hayloft. Then sail out again, not quite so far this time. Then in again, not quite so high. Then out again, then in again, then out, then in, and then you just jump off and fall down and let somebody else try. Mothers for miles around worried about Zuckerman's swing. They, they feared some children would fall off, but no child ever did. Children almost always hanging onto things tighter than their parents would think they will. Avery put the frog in his pocket and climbed to the hayloft. The last time I swang in this ring, I almost crashed into the barn swallow, he yelled. Take that frog out, ordered Fern. Avery straddled the rope and jumped. He swayed out through the floor, frog and all, and into the sky, a frog and all. Then he sailed back into the barn. Your tongue is purple, screamed Fern. So is yours, cried Avery, sailing out again, and then with the frog. I have hay inside my dress. It itches, said Fern. Scratch it, yelled Avery as he sailed back. It's my turn, said Fern. Jump off. Fern caught the itch, saying Avery. When he jumped off, he threw the swing up to his sister. She shut her eyes tight and jumped. She felt the dizzy drop and the then the supporting lift of the swing. When she opened her eyes, she was looking up into the blue sky and was about to fly back to the door. They took turn for an hour. When the children grew tired of swinging, they went down and toward the pasture and picked wild raspberries and ate them. Their tongues turned from purple to red. Worms into a raspberry that had a bad tasting bug inside it and got discouraged. Avery found an empty candy box and put his frog in it. The frog seemed tired, and after his morning in the swing, the children walked slowly up toward the barn. They too were worried and hardly had energy enough to walk. Let's build a tree house, suggested Avery. I want to live in a tree with my frog. I'm going to visit Wilbur, Fern announced. They climbed the fence into the lane and walked leisurely toward the pig pen. Wilbur heard them coming and got up. Avery noticed the spiderweb and come closer. He saw Charlotte. Hey, look at that big spider, he said. It's a tremendous. Look at it. Leave it alone, commanded Fern. You got a frog. Isn't that enough? That's a fine spider, and I'm going to capture it, said Avery. He took the cover off the candy box. Then he picked up a stick. I'm going to knock that old spider into that box, he said. Wilbur's heart almost stopped when he saw what was going on. This might be the end of Charlotte if the boy succeeded in catching her. You stop it, Avery, cried Fern. Avery put one leg onto the fence of the pig pen. He was just about to raise his stick to hit Charlotte when he lost his balance. He swayed and toppled landed on the edge of Wilbur's trough.
We're glad everybody can make it. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Okay.
All right. See you guys at 10 tomorrow morning. Bye, guys.
See you tomorrow.
Bye, you guys.
Good job, Marlissa. Bye, Shay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Lance.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.